Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. An age-old discussion has returned to the COD scene over the last couple of days, discussing the relative strength of the Dynasty rosters, the COD Dynasty, the OpTic Dynasty, and the FaZe Trios era that arguably they've had for the last couple of years. Crimsix, though, stops racing for a couple of seconds and says, look, this shouldn't even be a discussion. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. First of all, it's a big drama in the Halo world that we've got to dive into here, because we mentioned it the other day as Formal, of course, and OpTic Gaming. They came second at HES London to FaZe Clan, not Atlanta FaZe, because that's just the COD stuff. But Complexity, they were disqualified earlier in the tournament because Spartan had been issued a ban for the event and now has been issued a ban for the entirety of the rest of the HCS season. And as a result, Complexity say, well, we can't keep him, we've got to let him go. Now, Spartan is going to appeal this and actually makes a very interesting statement here on exactly what's happened, apologizing for what he did, which he shouldn't have done, obviously, but we'll discuss in a second why it is probably far less bad than it initially appeared. And this is why basically every single pro player that's made a statement on this has said they think Spartan's ban is way too harsh. And it would be very interesting to draw comparisons to what would happen if this occurred in the Call of Duty landscape, for example. So anyway, Spartan goes through and explains things, also explains how the initial HCS ruling was actually in some ways incorrect. And they made an adjustment to this. They made an adjustment to their updated, basically their ruling, although they've not said, oh, you know, our bad, we updated the ruling because that was a mistake. They obviously haven't said that publicly, but which is maybe understandable. But I just wanted to address exactly what's changed between when we discussed it the other day, between what is happening today. So this is what Complexity say happens, based on the discussion that was had with the administrators. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, during HCS London, Spartan basically downloaded third-party software onto an SSD to potentially be used in matches. Now, initially, it was pictured that he'd brought this own SSD in with him to then, like, replace the one that they'd given him that had the third-party software on. Now, that third-party software was not cheats, not wall hacks, not aim hacks or anything. It was MSI Afterburner to use to effectively crank up the power and the performance of the PC. Now, it turns out this was actually not Spartan's own SSD. This was an SSD that they'd given him, but was underperforming in their scrims. And therefore, he decided, all right, I'll reformat whatever, because he's good with that type of stuff, and probably bring that SSD in line with where the other ones were performing. But of course, this was deemed unacceptable. And also, he never even played a game on this SSD. It was not like he played a series. I think they lost to FaZe maybe, or they lost to someone anyway, with that SSD installed. It wasn't even used in that series. He gave it back to the admins or something like that, and then they found that he tampered with it, but he played no games with that SSD on. And initially, I made the point a couple of days ago, which I thought was justified at the time, that this at least seems to be, from the initial reading of the situation, that Spartan had intentionally downloaded software with the intention to gain a competitive advantage. But having read through the discussion, it doesn't really seem like that's the case. I don't think that this is as blatant cheating or anything like that as it initially appeared. Now, is it against the rules? Sure. And as a result, they were disqualified from the entire tournament. But the ban for the entire season is now causing lots of drama, because the pros think, look, Spartan didn't cheat here. Not only did he not cheat, but he probably didn't intend to cheat, given, you know, that he used the software to potentially boost up a poorly performing SSD, whatever, right? And also there's the question on how did HCS give him, you know, a poorly performing SSD in the first place? So there's all this stuff. But Renegade, arguably best player in the game right now for FaZe, says HCS needs to reconsider this punishment. I think the ruling is insane. Most competitive players at the tournament feel the same way. You're taking away someone's livelihood. Lucid from OpTic says there's no reason that Spartan should be held out from anything more than Atlanta. He made a poor decision with regards to optimizing a PC without confirming with officials, had no impact on any matches. They already got disqualified. This ruling that's going to ban him for the rest of the season is too harsh. Even Snakebite comes in and says, yeah, he clearly made a mistake. I don't believe that he was intending to cheat. I think the fact that he never played with the SSD in tourney competition could have very much been avoided. HCS also made the ruling language seem like he had brought his own and played on the SSD, only to now update the blog, given the context that it was indeed their own, with no tweet to correct their own fault, which is kind of what I was getting at, because based on what HCS initially said, I think that I and many others are probably justified to think that, you know, this was intended cheating, but that doesn't really seem to be the case now. So yeah, 1 year ban seems to me pretty harsh, and there was even discussion here from Moses that they're doing this just because, well, Spartan's a pretty vocal player, shall we say, in multiple ways, often calling out the HCS on various things, and maybe they're taking a very hardline stance because they want to shut this guy up, basically. I don't know what you guys think, but I thought it was really interesting if this happened in the COD world, like if someone had, let's say, messed with their PC somehow, but that wasn't even used in the game, what would happen, right? What would the punishment be? Would there be like a ban for an entire season? What would the players say? Would the teams do like a boycott unless they were to reverse that decision? I guess it would depend on the player to some extent. So very interesting stuff. Wanted to give you guys the update on that for sure. Just quickly on the Esports World Cup, because there's new developments on this every day at this point. Wanted to just go through which teams are actually invited, because we're pretty sure now that MW3 will be played with a $1.8 million prize pool in late August in Riyadh alongside the rest of the Esports World Cup stuff. These are the teams though that have been invited to it. There may be other options, but it's just worthy of note that there are 4 of these that are in COD. Now, OpTic aren't even here, and that's probably because they just don't field that many esports teams to be invited. But of course, FaZe, they have a COD team. G2 have a COD team with the Minnesota Rocker. KLY are involved because they are owned by Overactive Media, who also own Toronto Ultra, and then of course 100 Thieves. But apart from that, those are the only like teams I believe that are actually involved in COD nowadays. So theoretically, the players that play for those respective teams could probably quite easily go to transfer to these organizations to play for those organizations at the Esports World Cup. But if you're OpTic, what do? You probably want to play, let's say you're Clayster, he's actually made it very clear publicly yesterday that, you know, he's certainly eyes emojiing at the $1.8 million prize pool, right? He's going to want to play at that, obviously, why would you not? But what do? Who do you play for, right? Like, do you have to get loans? Like, what if Ravens want to keep you on, but now you've got to get loaned out to a team? That may well be how it is, that you see these players signed to contracts, but then loaned out to other organizations to then play for them. So who are the OpTic guys going to play for? Like, it'd be really weird to see them play a tournament not on OpTic, but that is probably how it might be. It'll be really interesting to see how this develops. Now, here's your boy in the downstairs area of the Toronto Major on the Wednesday. I think this was on the media day when we did, well, a couple of questions here with Gersh and asked the question, OpTic Dynasty or FaZe Trio? And I was genuinely very surprised watching this yesterday that basically all the other guys just said FaZe. And I think that while it's certainly a debate, as I say here, you know, look, I'm going to need to see FaZe win more. I'm going to need to see them win more finals before I can pick them here. But, you know, Gunless is FaZe Trio, Gwyn's is FaZe Trio, JoeDeceives is FaZe Trio, Trey, who knows some ball, says OpTic Trio, but then he says, oh, I don't want to get roasted, FaZe up type thing. And obviously Simp is going to say FaZe. So this was a debate yesterday. It was going around, people talking about it in the replies as always. Obviously the OpTic Trio kind of referring to Crimsix, Scump and Formal, because they did change their fourth kind of, right? They had Nade, then they had Enable before they could actually get Karma because he didn't have his visa or whatever to come to Europe for those couple of tournaments, and then they had Karma. Although Crimsix's perspective is that actually this isn't quite the same deal as FaZe, because as Crim says in the replies here, one had to change their roster, the other did not. And while sure, technically OpTic did have different rosters, there has been only one of those 2 respective teams that have changed massively over the last couple of years, and that of course is Atlanta FaZe. That FaZe trio, Simp, aBeZy, Cellium, they started back in Modern Warfare 19 with Major Maniac and Priestahh. They were their 2 teammates. Next year they had Arcetes, the year after they had Arcetes, the year after they had Slasher, now it's Drazah. So, you know, that trio has changed 4ths or even 5ths as it was back a few years ago multiple times. They've gone through 4 or 5 in that particular position. Whereas for OpTic, that was most certainly not the case. Enable wouldn't have even been there had Karma got his visa. And whether you consider Nadeshot to be part of that dynasty is another question in and of itself. So, yeah, as Crim says, one had to change their roster, the other did not. Basically saying that this isn't even a debate between OpTic and FaZe. It's, you know, it's OpTic dynasty all the way. And obviously Crim is going to say that because he was on there. But, you know, that is certainly the implication. And I gave my opinion in the video. I believe that to be true. But I don't care so much about average placing. Don't care so much about online match victories and stuff. What I care about is when you get to the Sunday, you know, how much are you winning at the end of the day? And OpTic's record and even Complexity's record before that on those Sundays has been very different to FaZe hasn't. We saw the numbers the other day. Cole won like 88% of their series on Sunday. OpTic won like 75% over a much longer time period. So very impressive in terms of the sample size. And FaZe have won like 51%, right? Which is why they're still just not going to be quite on the same level as far as I'm concerned. It's always difficult to judge between the respective eras, but I just feel like FaZe have got to do more if they want to try and be on that level. Certainly as that trio, and maybe Crim makes a fair point as well. So obviously there were people in the replies. Crim even replied to this one and thought this was kind of funny. But obviously you can make the argument that really, is Crim even correct just because the other teams in question also made roster changes? Jacob says, you just invalidated your Complexity Dynasty because they made a change. And Crim's like, well, yeah, can't really respond to that one, right? So this is the Cole Dynasty back in the day when they had 2 quick initially, but they weren't obviously the Dynasty then. After the World Championship, they made the change. They brought Clayster in. They won 5 events in a row with Clayster, and then they dropped him. And they brought Karma in, and they went on to continue to win basically everything from then to even, you know, halfway through Ghosts before the team then collapsed after a fair bit of drama. So, look, I mean, it's quite clear that they were a Dynasty roster here. They then made a change. But to be fair, we're not talking about Complexity in this. We're talking about OpTic Gaming, and this was the situation there. Of course, as I say, much longer time span. But at the start of Advanced Warfare, it was the Nadeshot Scump Formal Crimsix team. They then, after the 7th at the World Championship, Nadeshot then retired effectively. Karma came in. Well, it was enabled briefly. Then it was Karma for the rest of time. And I think you can argue that, you know, the Nadeshot days where they won 3 events in a row at the start of Advanced Warfare deserve more credit for Nadeshot. And, you know, was that part of the Dynasty, or do they really only become the Dynasty roster slightly later on? They won a couple of events with Enable. I think even one of them, maybe ESWC, isn't appearing on here because I filtered by, what was it, Premiere or something. Maybe it wasn't considered so much. And also, I guess in Black Ops 3, we're probably not going to be seeing here the Crown Melbourne Invitational, which they also won as that team. But nonetheless, Karma with that trio was, and even just considering the Dynasty versus Simp, aBeZy, Cell, they were just a team for much longer, right? So Crimsix's opinion is definitely true in the sense that they retained their roster for much longer. At the same time, they won obviously multiple championships with that exact same team, whereas obviously FaZe trio with their 4th is not the case, and you know they've needed to make changes because they just haven't been winning as much as they should be, I guess is the implication there from Crim. I guess one thing is that they only won 1 World Championship, 1 ring with this quartet. I mean, they only had 2 attempts really, right? Because they had Nadeshot during the World Championship 2015, which you might not consider. And then they, of course, you know, went 1 of 2 in the next couple. And obviously the FaZe trio, as a trio, they've only got 1 as well, because Simp and aBeZy got theirs back in Black Ops 4, but that wasn't with Cellium. So they only have 1 as a trio technically. It's an interesting discussion. Times change in the COD scene. It's always difficult to analyze and compare between eras because there's been lots of replies saying, well, you know, you might say that, Crim, but you were playing in the plummet era. So therefore it doesn't count either, but intrigued to your thoughts as always in the comment section below. Just one final thing. I promised it yesterday that we would continue going on in terms of how teams have progressed and performed in online qualifiers and LAN events so far in their history. And yeah, it ain't pretty for Paris Legion. To be fair, their winners bracket make percentage would be way worse. But actually, since they've become the Vegas Legion, they've at least made it a handful of times. But yeah, still 3 of 16, not the best. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
I got fined in the CDL for saying I'd rather move a rib and try to suck my own balls than play the game. It's a true story.
They fined you for that?
Yeah.
That's a good warning.
How much did you get fined?
Like 5 racks or something?
No, what?
I swear to God,
Wait, 5 G's for
5
that?
racks?
I swear
I would
to God.
have went Bobby Cox off and paid it in pennies.
Was that like a first warning, or was that like after?
No, it was my first one, Ben. I said I'd rather remove a rib and try to suck my own meat than play this game. It was MW 2019.
Wait, hold on. What happens if you don't pay a fine? Why did you pay it?
I don't want to find out.
What are they gonna do if you don't pay your damn fine? Deadass.
I didn't want to find out. I don't think I ended up paying it. I think I got someone to cover that.
What are they gonna tell Hot Pockets when they don't meet their minimum on their fucking deliverables because the King's not playing? You made a joke about you should have not paid it, bro. Taking a stand.
I can't believe you guys haven't heard about that story.